Eyewitness News, the Northwest's most complete, comprehensive, and up-to-the-minute coverage. With meteorologist Dennis Feltgen, sportscaster Bob Bruce, and newscasters Cindy Brucato and Stan Turner.
Good evening, everyone. Just a short while ago, congressional leaders approved a stopgap measure to end a layoff of nearly 1/5 of the IRS employees. Dennis Moore is standing by live at the IRS office in St. Paul with the details. Dennis?
That's right, Cindy. Just an hour ago when I talked to you on the 5 o'clock news, it looked like we were heading for the largest layoff in the history of the IRS. 19,000 people around the country, 214 here in St. Paul and 22 around the rest of Minnesota. The IRS was answering the phones today. It wasn't completely shut down, but the people who were doing that weren't scheduled to be laid off. The IRS people are paid out of 4 different accounts, and the account that paid people in criminal investigation, collections, and in something called employee plans and tax-exempt organizations, that account ran out today because President Reagan had vetoed an emergency budget bill that was scheduled to get the government through the end of the fiscal year on September 30th. The IRS had the money in other accounts. It could have transferred the money if the chairman of the House and Senate Appropriation Committees would agree to do that. But one of those chairmen, Senator James Abner of South Dakota, balked because he said the IRS this summer had hired 2,000 people without getting the approval of Congress, and the Treasury Department, under which the IRS operates, had actually asked for the presidential veto because it opposed the bill for other reasons. Well, at the end of all this political wrangling, Treasury Secretary Don Regan gave Abner a call and said, would you please let them transfer the money? That happened late this afternoon, and he did. So the 214 people who left here today thinking they were out of a job have now got one tomorrow. But the problem really isn't over there yet. The Congress will still try to override the presidential veto later this week. House and Senate leaders aren't sure they can do it, and if they don't, this kind of layoff or last-minute political brinkmanship could affect other government agencies later on this month until the White House and the Congress finally come to an agreement. Cindy?
So much intrigue building up. Thank you, Dennis. A shortage of cash was also evidence in St. Paul schools today.
Was it ever? Very evident, not very subtle, this cash shortage. Today being the first day of school in St. Paul, students got their first taste of what it's going to be like to live with this year's budget cuts. At Central High School, that's the largest senior high in the city, there are 16 fewer teachers this year. That means that classes are larger. The average class size will increase from 28 last year to 35 this year. Students will have to get used to less personal attention from their teachers, and that is not all. There will be no new textbooks this year. The school only buys books every 5 years, but this year it was delayed because of the money crunch. Still, the principal believes that Central will still be offering a quality education.
The biggest obstacle right now is the size of some of the classrooms, and the programs are still intact, and a little less money's for textbooks and for some other materials. Some budgetary limitations there. But we certainly haven't curtailed our program. We're still trying to offer a quality program to all students.
And as it happens, there may be some more money for St. Paul schools. After the cuts, the school board came up with an $800,000 surplus, and they may allocate part of that money to the schools. Now, the school board is meeting tonight, and that question is on their agenda. Our Dave Andrews is standing by live right now for a bit of a preview. Dave?
Well, Stan, there has been a new development in this story, which means that the school board, which, as you said, is meeting right now, may not have any sort of surplus at all to deal with. It's rather complicated, so we'll try to explain it the best we can. 2 weeks ago, a subcommittee of the school board, working under the assumption that the board did have an $800,000 surplus, recommended that some $450,000 of that be used possibly to rehire some of the now 219 St. Paul school teachers that have been laid off. But between that meeting and tonight's meeting, the school superintendent's office has notified the school board that because of a new state law that was passed earlier this year, which has to do with the total fund surpluses of all the funds within the school budget, that may mean that St. Paul can now levy only $1 million less than they had originally anticipated doing. And what that all boils down to is the fact that that $800,000 surplus may turn into a $200,000 deficit. And of course, if that is in fact the case, that means that none of the teachers that possibly could have been rehired, it still only would have been 20 or 30 teachers, but it now looks as though none of those people that possibly could have been rehired will in fact be rehired by the school board. Right now, the school board is meeting. They're going to deal with this question, which has come as somewhat of a surprise to many of the school board members. As we said 2 weeks ago, board members were working under the assumption they had this surplus, and now they don't feel that they do. That question is going to be raised and discussed this evening, and it appears right now that the whole question may have to go back to a subcommittee for further action, but the bottom line appears to be that $800,000 just may not be here for the school board to work with.
Just when there was hope, now we've got a probable letdown. Thank you, David. Well, teachers in the Matamidi School District are also in the news tonight. They've set a precedent over benefits that's causing quite a stir. Carolyn Bruchter has that story for us.
Every 5 years, teachers have to recertify their teaching license. To do that, they need 120 credit units. Most of these credits are received from work-related activities, such as attending seminars or workshops. But now these Matamidi teachers can also get up to 33 of their necessary credits from activities during a strike.
They've learned a lot about our community that we teach in. They've learned a lot about the educational system that they teach in, and they've learned a lot about other teachers in our school system. And so this was just kind of part of the overall picture. Units were not granted per se for walking on the picket line.
Last year, Matamidi teachers staged one of the longest strikes in the state, staying out the classroom nearly 7 weeks. As might be expected, Matamidi school officials voiced major opposition to the plan. They say it is not so much a violation of guidelines, but more of an interpretation of the guidelines.
My problem with the decision was the current rule and regulation in effect, and I didn't see how that could be construed to fall within maintaining of one's professional skills and competence, at least as it relates to improving education for students by participation in collective bargaining activities.
But the school district has little recourse. While the State Board of Continuing Education can also protest the move, it cannot overrule the local Continuing Education Committee. And so teachers in this small school district of 110 members have set a new precedent. One school districts across the country will watch closely. Carolyn Bruchter, Channel 5 Eyewitness News.
Well, shrinking financial aid and higher tuition fees are taking their toll on some of the state's higher education facilities. Preliminary figures show that two-year community college enrollment may be up as high as 5%, but enrollment at some private colleges, state universities, and the University of Minnesota will be slightly down this year. Still ahead, more problems for that food warehouse in Hopkins. There's been another PCB spill.
And we're going to tell you why work to improve roads in Apple Valley is upsetting business owners there. We'll get to those stories and more in just a moment.
Minnesota Federal wants your checking account, and we'll pay you money market rates to get it. Market rate checking, where every day, every dollar over $2,000 automatically earns high-yield money market rates, and your balance under $2,000 earns 5.25%. Write as many checks as you want, whenever you want, in any amount you want. Market rate checking. It's the ultimate checking plan, and it's yours, only at Minnesota Federal.
Atari brings you a dazzling variety of software for the Atari home computer.
Billy, Dad and I think you're old enough now.
What's that?
Atari software.
It's not soft.
It's what you put into the computer to make it work.
Software that keeps track of things.
Where's my allowance?
Software like Pac-Man. Atari's the only home computer that has it. And Pilot, the language that makes programming easy. Software to educate, challenge, excite.
Someday, Billy, this'll all be yours.
Really?
You know, I'm really a nice, easygoing guy. Like you, I enjoy a little peace and quiet. But sometimes it doesn't work out that way. So it's good I've got my Captain Black. It's always cool smoking, it never bites me, and you never have to inhale. So if you're not getting all the peace and quiet you want, hey, relax and enjoy a pipe full of Captain Black. Never a bite in a bowl.
Hello, I'm Orville Redenbacher. I've always sealed my gourmet popping corn in jars for freshness. But great taste takes more than jars. It takes great corn. I've spent over 30 years perfecting my special hybrid kernels to pop lighter and fluffier than others. So my gourmet popping corn won't taste stale or chewy. Each tender kernel melts in your mouth. Jars are important, but for great taste, it's the corn that counts. And there's only one Orville Redenbacher.
The PCB leak at the Gateway Warehouse in Hopkins is now being called the first spill of its kind at a food warehouse in this country. And today there's even more reason to call it that. There's been another leak of that toxic substance. Our environmental specialist Tom Stewart reports.
Decontamination crews began cleaning up the leak of about 50 gallons of PCB-laced oil this weekend at the Gateway Food Warehouse in Hopkins. Workers drained the PCBs from the 2 electrical transformers that malfunctioned here last month and stored that toxic substance outside the building. But in the process, they apparently spilled more PCBs, forcing the Applebaum's bakery, also located inside the building, to close down yesterday.
Both transformers that were leaking have been drained, but in part of their decontamination of the outsides of the transformer over the bakery area, they apparently loosened some areas up, and there's now some leakage inside the bakery.
As a result, state inspectors impounded 1,500 loaves of bread, and Applebaum's then voluntarily withheld another $20,000 to $25,000 worth of bakery goods, just in case of contamination. Gateway has already recalled the food products that were recently stored near the contaminated oil. Both Gateway and Applebaum spokesmen declined to comment on camera, but they did express confidence that all food that was anywhere near the contaminated area has been removed from the stores, and consumers who have any doubts about that are being encouraged to take their food back for replacement or a refund. Meantime, the contaminated area of the warehouse remains sealed off, while the Pollution Control Agency determines how to clean it up.
It's still at the stage of getting some samples from it, and we're talking with the cleanup contractor, determining what has to be done.
Environmental authorities also have to determine what to do about the possible violations of state and federal PCB storage regulations. Tom Stewart, Channel 5 Eyewitness News, Hopkins.
The drivers of a car and a semi escaped serious injury this morning after a crash in Plymouth. Police say the truck and the car were crossing an intersection when they smashed into one another. The truck was carrying a load of steel and rolled over. The drivers were treated and released at North Memorial Hospital.
Cindy, Minnesota will receive an additional $6 million in federal funds for highway construction. That money will go toward building 35E in Dakota County and is coming from a $169 million fund for states across the country that have already used up their federal highway improvement money. Contract bids for the project will begin at the end of October. And a road construction project already underway is causing headaches. Headaches for about a dozen businesses in Apple Valley. A 2-mile stretch of Cedar Avenue from 35E south to 140th Street will be closed for the next 2 years while the road is being rebuilt. Businesses along the road say the construction project is driving customers away.
It's down about a third overall in shop and gasoline both. The shop's holding up a lot better than the gas, but the gas is down. Right now, what time is it? About 4 o'clock, 4:30? You shouldn't hardly be able to drive in the place the way it was before they closed Cedar Avenue.
Now it's bare.
Yeah, there's nothing there. Big sandbox.
Businesses in the area plan to meet next week to see what they can do to bring customers back into the area.
Well, we think this weather's being just a little bit cruel. I mean, day after Labor Day and gray skies abound. We'll see what the rest of the week holds when we return.
Now, the Twin Cities have their own in-water boat show, Thursday, September 9th through Sunday, September 12th. Join the excitement. Sailboats, powerboats, family fun boats. See them, board them, buy them. It's easy to reach, easy to park. Admission is $275 for adults, and children under 12 with their parents get in free. Don't miss the Twin Cities in-water boat show. Take Highway 61 to nearby Hastings. It floats.
Electricity. Maybe we could live without it, but think about what it does for us every day. It runs a sewing machine that creates new clothes. And it also takes electricity to stitch together yards and yards of sail, to capture the wind and enrich our leisure hours. Electricity. Maybe we could live without it, but think of all the things we'd be living without.
Here at one end, American farmers. They want a good price for the food they grow. At the other end, American consumers. They don't want to pay 1 penny too much for the food they eat. How do you make both ends meet? If you're the people at Cargill, you help by coming up with more efficient ways to store, care for, and deliver the farmer's grain, so that grain gets from where it's grown to where it's needed at the lowest possible cost. That's what you do if you're the people at Cargill. You help make both ends meet.
Great year-end clearance prices are nice, but Pontiac's Move 'em Out program has made it possible for your dealer to pass on savings of hundreds of dollars on 4 of these new Pontiacs. That's exciting. Come in and get our best deal, which includes savings of hundreds of dollars on any Pontiac 6000, save hundreds on any J2000, save hundreds on any T1000, save hundreds of dollars on any Phoenix. But hurry, you must take retail delivery by September 22nd to get these great additional savings. See your participating Pontiac dealer now and save.
Farm experts are warning that an early frost in Minnesota could threaten late-planted corn and soybeans. The rain kept farmers out of their fields in mid to late May, and because of that, some corn wasn't planted until the middle of June, and that corn won't be ready until about October 10th. Now, that could pose problems. Weather experts say that there is a strong possibility of colder than normal air hitting Minnesota in the middle of the month, and if that is the case, agronomy professor R. Kent at the University of Minnesota says a mid-September frost could destroy 20% of the state's late corn.
If it isn't one thing, it's another.
Colder than normal air hitting Minnesota about the middle of the month.
It's new on me.
Yeah, okay.
I know it's supposed to average out a little bit below average, but the way the weather is shaping up for the next couple of days, we're looking at 80-degree readings, probably by Thursday or Friday.
Sounds a lot better.
Of course, you'd never know it the way the weather's been today. The 6 o'clock temperature is in the mid-60s. It hasn't budged since late this afternoon. It's 65. The dew point's way up to 58. Now, that's close to the temperature, meaning the moisture is really locked into the air. Humidity is 78%. The winds are southeast and the pressure's steady. In the weather almanac, the high today is the current reading of 65. The low is 54. And that high today is 8 degrees below average. What happened? Well, we had clouds. Simple as that. The satellite photograph early this morning showed all of Minnesota socked in with clouds, with partly cloudy conditions in northwestern Wisconsin and way out in the western Dakotas. Now, we were hoping this would zip on through and we'd have sunshine this afternoon, but as the time-lapse rolls along, it became obvious that that wasn't to be. Oh, the clouds broke up in the Dakotas, all right, and even in southwestern Minnesota, but they still hung around in the eastern part of our state and also into western Wisconsin, and that resulted in temperatures still way, way below average. KSTP color radar has been looking around that cloud deck, and right now we are not seeing any significant precipitation around the state of Minnesota or Wisconsin. There have been a few sprinkles coming through that today, but nothing of any real significance. And you know, all of this is because we have high pressure. That's right. There's a giant area of high pressure which is in the eastern half of the country right now, in fact, way up in northeastern Canada, and that was our cool air yesterday and gave us our terrific weather day. You see, I know the days to take off. And this area of high pressure has actually been sending some warm air back to us. But the warm air has been sliding up and over the cold air. It's lighter than the cold air and goes up and over, and that's what we call overrunning. It's very common here in the Twin Cities during winter. It can actually give us some of our heaviest snowfalls. Well, we obviously aren't cool enough for snow, and we didn't have enough moisture in the air to really give us any kind of significant precipitation. But it was enough to sock in the clouds across our region, and even some fog has been built up underneath that. But as long as this area of high pressure is with us, we're going to remain in this situation, and it's going to stay with us for about the next 24 hours. Underneath that high has been some exceptionally cool temperatures. Low temperatures last night across the country and up into Canada show 20-degree readings up around the northern part of the Great Lakes. It was a record 29 degrees this morning at Marquette, Michigan, with quite a bit of frost. But again, the return flow around that high has been bringing up readings in the 70s and the 60s. Low temperatures last night around the metropolitan area were in the upper 40s and low 50s, and highs today again held down because of the cloud cover in the low to mid 60s. There is abundant moisture in the air, and the temperatures are going to remain cool, and that's going to mean fog once again. And in fact, fog is going to be shared not only by Twin Cityans, but from places from International Falls all the way down to St. Louis and down to Lexington, Kentucky. But once this area of high pressure moves on out, then we should see some improvement, and I'm looking for this high to continue an eastward drift. It'll be a slow drift, so look for the skies to be cloudy when you get up tomorrow morning, but by tomorrow afternoon, we should see some sunshine and warmer temperatures. KSTP forecast for tonight calls for cloudy skies with fog, some occasional light drizzle, but nothing measurable. Lows of 54 to 58. For tomorrow, it'll be cloudy in the morning, but becoming partly cloudy in the afternoon. Highs of 74 to 78. Tomorrow night and Thursday, partly cloudy and warmer. Lows of 60 to 65. Highs Thursday, 78 to 83. And look at the outlook for the weekend. A chance of summertime thunderstorms for Friday and Saturday, partly cloudy on Sunday, but temperatures well above average.
That sounds nice. Very good. Thank you, Dennis. A couple of notes tonight from our boys in Washington, D.C. Minnesota Senator Rudy Boschwitz says he's upset with Israel's Prime Minister Menachem Begin. In a news conference this afternoon, Boschwitz said that when Begin moved in with bulldozers and began to establish new settlements in the Middle East, it was the slap in the face to President Reagan.
Prime Minister Begin has publicly said that everything's negotiable, and it is in this spirit that I trust that the work on the new settlements will be discontinued and negotiations for a broader peace continued. It's the right moment. With the end of the PLO in Lebanon, with the end of the PLO as a threat in the Middle East, it's the right moment to pursue peace, not settlements.
And Boschwitz said he plans to meet with the Secretary of State later this week to discuss the situation in the Middle East. And Congressman Bruce Vento has won the backing of a nationwide consumer advocacy organization. The Consumer Federation of America says that Vento's 85% career consumer voting record is among the highest in Congress. They're pleased to endorse his reelection campaign. The group calls Democrat Vento a staunch ally of consumer interests. Stan?
And Cindy, about 12% of the voters who will go to the polls next Tuesday it is, to vote in the Minnesota primary election will not be properly registered. That estimate according to Secretary of State Joan Groh, but it is quite easy really to register at the polls on Election Day. Just bring a driver's license or some other ID with a current address. Also, another registered voter can attest to your residency. And if you happen to be a student living away from home, all you need to do is bring to the polls a fee statement or a student ID card. Pretty easy. In sports, a major upset, well, I'll say it is, at the U.S. Open. Martina, what did you do? And the Vikings add 1, but they get to 49. Bob Bruce has the goods for us next on Eyewitness Sports.
It's coming! The original and most complete outdoor clothing and ski equipment sale ever assembled under a tent begins Thursday at Hoygaard's.
When you play the game, but make your own rules. Panther Fashions. When you're living in style, because you have a style all your own. Panther Fashions. When you've got a look that puts you in the driver's seat. Panther Fashions. Available at your favorite store.
This print is protected by PhotoGuard, the exclusive new 35mm print coating from Brown Photo. Now let's put it to the test. Brown Photo protects your prints from scratching, smudging, staining, even fading at no extra cost. And we use Kodak paper for a good look. Thank you. So don't lose your family's memories. Bring your film to Brown Photo, first with a finish that lasts.
Some folks say I'm just a ham, but I'm a sausage man, that's what I am. My smoked sausage is made just right. Real smoked taste, a little more bite.
Jimmy Dean smoked sausage.
Any way you serve it, you're gonna love it. Jimmy Dean smoked sausage, 3 great varieties with that natural smoked flavor. You think smoked sausage is all the same? Try Jimmy Dean. Don't you love that name?
Jimmy Dean
smoked sausage.
All right, the Vikings have got their numbers now down to fighting trim, huh?
Finally, we found out about the few players that we did know about yesterday who are no longer Minnesota Vikings. Officially, the Vikings had their roster down to 49 yesterday, but they waited till this afternoon to announce the names of the last few players who won't be in uniform for Sunday's game against Tampa. To reach the league limit, the Vikings cut 2, put 2 on the injured reserve list, then added a quarterback from Buffalo. The players cut are Greg Murtha, an offensive tackle who played high school ball at Minneapolis Southwest and college football at the University of Minnesota. Also, Brian Howard, a safety from Tennessee. Howard was the Vikings' 9th-round draft pick. Offensive lineman Bill Stefanos and defensive end Ray Yakovonis will start the season on injured reserve. Stefanos has a concussion, Yakovonis an injured knee. That put the roster at 48. The Vikes then added a player, cornerback Rufus Bess, who was waived by the Buffalo Bills. Bess is a 4-year veteran out of South Carolina State. Of the 49 now on the roster, 4 will be on the taxi squad, and 45 will dress for the opener against Tampa. College football. Herschel was hurting last night, so the 7th-ranked Georgia Bulldogs leaned on their defense in last night's season opener against the national champs from Clemson. A block punt and a pair of field goals made the difference as the Bulldogs knocked off last year's top dog, 13-7. That ended Clemson's winning streak at 13. All-American Herschel Walker, still nursing a broken thumb, did play last night but was held to 20 yards in 11 carries. The big play coming up, second quarter. Georgia's Dale Carver comes in, blocks the punt. Stan Dooley took it in for the touchdown. That tied the game at 7. Kevin Butler added 2 field goals as Georgia and the Dogs beat Clemson 13-7. Well, a shocker here. The ladies' top seed, Martina Navratilova, has been ousted from the U.S. Open Tennis Championships in New York. Martina was beaten today by her doubles partner, Pam Shriver. At the outset, Navratilova seemed in control, winning the first set 6-1, but Shriver took the next 2 and the match 7-6, 6-2. So Shriver is in the semifinals. Earlier today, Chris Everett-Lloyd reached the quarterfinals with a straight set win over Zina Garrison. The Twins didn't exactly double their pleasure in Texas last night. They had a chance to close in on the 6th-place Rangers. Instead, they managed to do something that they haven't done all season, lose 2 games on the same day. The scores 4-3 and 11-7. The long ball was about the only bright spot for the Twins. Kent Herbeck had a home run in each game. He now has 21. Tommy Bernansky, Gary Ward, and Randy Bush also homered for the Twins last night, but they still lose them both. The 4-game series continues later tonight in Texas. Baseball this afternoon, one score to report on. Philadelphia over the Cubs, 7-5. A sad note from the world of baseball. Ken Boyer, who was the National League's most valuable player in 1964, died today after a long bout with lung cancer. Boyer spent most of his major league career with the St. Louis Cardinals. He had a grand slam home run as the Cards beat the Yankees in the '64 World Series. In 15 years, the third baseman won 5 Gold Gloves and played in 7 All-Star games. Later, he managed the Cardinals for 2 seasons. Kenny Boyer, dead today at the age of 51. Well, tonight at 10, we'll check into football practice out at Rosemont High School. The defending Class AA champions are off to another strong start this season. But this time, the team is not the subject of the story. Rather, we're going to check into a new assistant coach by the name of Craig Cusick. Remember that? The former twin? That's right. Mongo Cusick is back living in the area, coaching of all things football at Rosemont High School. And we'll find out tonight how a former Major League Baseball player goes about coaching football today in high school. And Rob Lear will have that story for us tonight at 10.
It's an interesting transition. You know, it was bad enough what happened to Martina, but the hands of her doubles partner.
That's
what
right.
happened to the ladies?
A close friend. Obviously, I don't know, maybe that team will be breaking up soon.
She just got blown away out there.
That was a big surprise, though.
It really was.
She was the big favorite.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there were some strange noises coming from a room on the campus of the North Dakota State University recently. It was the first time a Billings, Montana school for auctioneers held classes so far east. The dozen students from all over the U.S. and Canada were paying to learn the ins and the outs of selling by auction. They learn every facet, but spend most of their time doing what you'd expect any self-respecting auctioneer to do.
$5 out there, who give $5 here, them bid 5, 7 1/2, 7.50, 10, 10, 10, 12 1/2, 10, 12 1/2, 15.
Well, Jason Davis went on the road again to North Dakota to cover this story, and we'll have his full report tonight at 10.
And we will, of course, have the local news and a look at the top national and international stories of the day. Until then, good evening.
Bye.